we've called this meeting together to start getting everyone thinking about the future, if this project has become a reality, and what the IDA can do to help, or what you may expect from the IDA, and try to share what knowledge we may have gained from some of the projects we've already been involved with. And so everyone's aware of who's here. Let's go around the room. Bill?
Bill Johnson, I'm on the Energy Committee as well as the Chairman of the Board of Legislators.
John Condino, I'm on the Energy Committee. Marshall Weir, Jefferson County Economic Development.
Joel Bartlett, Town of Watertown Supervisor.
Roger Tibbetts, Town of Watertown Assessor. Dave Zenbeck, Jefferson County Economic Development.
Tom Stevenson, Jefferson County Economic Development.
Jay Madison, Agricultural Coordinator for Jefferson County Economic Development.
Stephanie Gaffney, Superintendent and Second Service of the School District.
Christine Powers on the Energy Committee.
Thank you. What we've done to try to prepare, if everyone's been following the news, the state has mandated that there is an appraisal model that has to be used to value these projects. We like to look at that because our goal is we have to justify any abatement from what full taxation is as we look at it. So did we email these out to?
No. So you've got copies of it.
But did we email it out to? Yeah.
Let me set it right down, right?
What we did is this morning,
I'm gonna send you a quick email.
last night I learned that the state had released the model that the assessors have to use this year. So to try to get an idea, look, even though the project's not built, to try to get a snapshot of what the full value might be right now. I ran the project through 3 different ways, and I'll go over those in a minute. While we wait for the email, does anyone have any questions or concerns of what we should address today besides valuation and taxes? Hearing none, the last I checked, the Borlex project hasn't filed any new documents with the state since November of last year. And that was the town of Hounsfield's quarterly or whatever report is for the use of the funds that are there. So I haven't seen any new filings. I'm sure that may change. I'm sure they were waiting to find out what happened with this model, so they could try to justify or make a decision about where they need to be for taxation. And it's a dramatic change from, they've released 3 models now. The first model, and that came out in October of 2022. I think, no, 21. Then they modified it in January, in late 2021, and then a town took them to court because they didn't follow the guidelines in the legislation and got a temporary restraining order. And just recently in the governor's budget with the adoption, it removed all those roadblocks that they failed to adhere to. And then as recent as yesterday, the state re-released the model, which is the same as the temporary restraining model. Do we happen to get the email from Dave yet from South Jeff?
Did you folks receive the email by any chance, Cora?
We do not have it yet.
Okay.
Maybe taking us out.
Well, Marshall said it. He couldn't even open an Excel spreadsheet.
I couldn't open it.
So as we wait for that, the original model that came out, we ran that earlier, I couldn't find a lot of fault with the value projection. I don't share what some assessors do, that cost is the best way to value these projects. They cost more to value. And they cost more to build than their value. This project is probably going to cost out in $130 million range. And If you look at the original model, using the same, it valued out at $88 million. So while it was less than what we are guessing the cost will be based on other information, it wasn't as bad. And I have circled on that sheet the tier 1 fixed rec credit. You'll see a $3.4 million revenue stream. Pretty much the biggest change from the first model to the other models is they removed that revenue stream from the calculation. And that is, what that is, a rec credit is they bid into NYSERDA and they were awarded a rec credit price of $14.98 a megawatt hour. So for every megawatt hour they produce, they're guaranteed to get that much, $14.98. And we had a seminar that, were you on the webinar? Yeah. And NYSERDA tried to justify that because they say they can buy and sell the rec credits, but it's still a revenue stream they're guaranteed. Now they could sell the rec credits to National Grid for $17 if they need to buy it. So that's probably the bottom line revenue stream that they're going to receive that was removed from the calculation for the valuation. And before I go any further, we should see if, or do you have the sheets yet?
Yes, we have the sheets now.
Okay. That, did you find the one that's like, I forget what I call the sheet.
Original. We have the original model. That's what we have open. We see the circled tier 1 fixed.
Yeah, so when we go to the second model, and you'll notice down at the bottom of the sheet there, that note that the value of the associated land is included in the model output. So that's including the land in that model. So if you go to, let's go to the leased land, which is the scenario we'll be probably looking at, because this is on leased land. You'll notice on the input sheet, if you compare the two, the rec credit price is removed from the inputs. Basically, to use this model, this is the one that assessors have to use this year in the project. We're in the Mohawk Valley sector zone. They are tracking. I went through and reviewed some documents last night in the presentation. This is a tracking system. If it was a fixed system, you just click on that and you put in fixed system, and it changes the amount of megawatt hours created in a year, so it lowers the value. 120,000 for you put in the number of kilowatt hours, not the number of kilowatt size, not the megawatt size. This is 120 megawatts, so the correct entry there is 120,000. Okay, and then the date of operation, we're assuming for our discussions today that it was it entered operation in January, and this is its first taxable status date. There is a before tax discount rate, which is the WACC, which is a weighted average cost of capital. If you go on their website, it'll tell you how they generated that. Chris, they're using the cost of money at 4%. I don't know for this type of thing, if that's low, high, or mid-low. Okay. And the higher that these two entries come, the lower the implied value will come out. It's just like a cap rate, Roger. And the tax load. And this is, I got as close as I could. You have to do a weighted tax load. We don't know how many megawatts are in South Jefferson versus Sackett Harbor. We don't know how many megawatts are in the town of Watertown versus the town of Hounsfield. The only thing I'm sure of is it's all in Jefferson County. So I did the best I could, and the tax load entry is 1.93%. That's basically saying that the average tax load is $19.30 across the board, weighted. Okay. That number is going to change because the town of Hounsfield just did a revaluation, so I don't know how that's going to affect that tax load calculation, but for today's discussion, discuss. Now, this is where I really took a swag. We had not been told what their lease payments are for the year or what the inflation factor. So I looked at what others are paying. And I'm guessing that we're gonna be somewhere between 800,000 and $1.1 million for the land lease. So I started at the low end because that'll give you the higher value. The higher the lease payment, the lower the implied value. If we were to change that to $1 million, it will drop the expected valuation. Those are the sole inputs to come up with what the valuation will be. And this is 100% valuation. So if you're in a town with less than 100% equalization rate, you gotta use your equalization rate to convert the full value assessment to what full value estimate to what the assessment would be. And I did that when I went through your rates to come up with the weighted tax load. So this is estimating that the market value for the improvement only because it's on leased land at $46.7 million.
Compared to 80.
Hmm?
Compared to 88.
Compared to 80. And if you go to look at your income, you'll notice that the rec credit income has disappeared. I just have Roger and I have talked a lot about this over the last few months, and revenue is revenue. It's not like it's, if we were doing a hotel, you consider the little vending machine incomes in the operation to estimate the value. So you'll see that created a much lower tier 1 total income. Okay, they also adjusted the production a little bit, if I recall correctly, but that was mine. That's down 20. If you'll see, they also lowered the production from 232, 594 to 199. So they 300,000 megawatt hours were removed from the calculation. So that adjusted everything. Why would we remove productions? My bet, let me give you the answer they gave. We heard they had better lobbyists than the the assessment side did. You know, they probably fine tune their numbers based on location, would be my guess. I'm sure when you get 2 or 3 years down the road, they're gonna be looking for actual numbers after these are operational. These are estimates based upon location on the earth, number of sun days. So this is where we're talking. That's gonna generate about $920,000 a year in tax. We figure nice round numbers, $20 a thousand. You're at 920,000 at full taxation. That's 7,600 and change a megawatt. To start. When you make this a 1-year-old project, it'll reduce the assessment about $1 million a year. If you were to put down that it started last year and year, we give you that's a round ball. The unknowns here, the only unknowns I really have here are the weighted tax load, but I'm pretty darn close. And the lease payment will have an impact. But
That's why we need an updated spreadsheet to plug this stuff into, because mine, the only one I have starts 2022, runs 25 years. So if you put in 2023, you lose a year, right? The other, I also have projects in Adams and Harrisburg, especially Harrisburg. And I've been using this model for 2 years. And it works. I don't care about the value. It puts a good number on it, okay? The problem with it is, what I just said, you can't use it now correctly, so I need that coming from someplace, and I reached out to Jeff Golker in order to see if he could provide any date information. The other factor is, you talk about this being energized in January, I suppose that's when the payments, pilot payments would start. If they aren't energized March first, the January assessment won't show them unless we put it in ahead of time. And I've had to do that a few times, and I'm uncomfortable with that. It probably could be sued for it.
Well, the answer to your concern is when we write a pilot, you can deal with that. It is your special those items that are not covered by a pilot where your issues are. But a pilot, we can make their first payment in June if we wanted to. Right now, there is that lag time from when the pilot's executed. The only issue is it won't show up as exempt until we file the 420A application, and then it goes on the tentative assessment roll on March 1st of a given year.
Right.
So,
But the other thing is, like, I had a project in Harrisburg, at the wind. And it was going to energize right after March 1st. So I put it on full value because they're gonna get like payments in January. Part of the project's in the town of Harrisburg, part of it's in the town of Lowell. The town of Lowell says, no, it's not energized, I'm not putting it on the roll.
you know, but if you read the roll, if you read the rules, it talks about or construction completed. It's construction completed, not necessarily energized.
What if it isn't? Like, okay, wind project in Harrisburg. The bases were in last year, so I contacted the project developer. I says, what do you value your bases at? 500,000 a piece, so that's what I put on the roll. And they're happy, so I got something there anyway. But this is the key factor is March 1st is taxable status date. You start collecting the following January on that assessment. So think about that when you're putting pilots together, that's all I'm saying.
Well, you're thinking in town and county, the school will get it in September. It depends how you
Well,
set your pilot
They're
up.
gonna be there, then. I mean, the value of the finished product is not gonna be in place. As far as my role goes. They get the pilot payment, but the special districts kind of get through
So,
or not.
well, and the third document is just estimating if the project owns the land. And in that model output, it estimates land and improvements. So while when it's on leased land, we only assess the improvements, it's 46, so they're guessing $9 million roughly for the value of land, and I think that's probably a little low. You know, what are you using an acre?
Well, it depends on where it is, but I'm using primary site value for every acre they occupy. And that's primary commercial site value. It might be in Watertown, it's old, but it's like maybe 12,000. In Harrisburg, it might be 22,000, you know, depending on where it's located in the equalization rate.
So that's just to give you an idea where the land value, that same 1,000 acres now is gonna be probably assessed at $3 million if it was all tillable. Okay, so there's gonna be a significant increase in the land values in the conversion from, well, agriculture, unused land or scrub land to an industrial use. So that's
So far,
where
I had good luck with the project owners accepting that, the primary site value. I haven't had a problem with it. But I think when the pilots are all done, we're gonna see a lot of challenges. They're gonna be coming in looking for a reduction on everything.
well, my concern would be in 15 years, how the depreciation may not come in, because they're gonna be depreciated down significantly over that period,
Right.
you know.
But the land value, they may even challenge the land value.
They can challenge the land value
They
now.
might say, well, capitalize the lease, and that's what the land value is. You know.
Well, if you capitalize the lease, it's gonna be closer to your $15,000 than it is something less. What was I thinking? I'm having a senior moment. So right now, our current pilot for 20 megawatts or less projects, each is,
5,500 megawatt.
what we've done is we have a pilot that starts at 5,500 megawatts. We inflate it by 2% a year, 15 years. Then what we do is we invert the schedule and we collect the year 15 inflated price the first year. And that, I mean, when we talk about Fargo Central, they really like that. The goal of that is to start getting more valuable dollars up front, but at the end of the pilot, hopefully we've lessened the tax cap impact if they haven't amended the law to deal with the end of pilot tax cap issue. I mean, what we're hearing from schools is that's their biggest concern is this, especially with something this large, that would push you into a tax cap override if the law is not
Correct,
amended.
with requiring a 60% majority of our school community, not of the board, but of the entire tax tank jurisdiction.
So that's been a concern.
Huge.
Yeah, you're
And
gonna need that anyway, I mean, even without a pilot in place, just with what they'd be paying if they pick full back.
no,
It's not.
It's not an
factored into
impact.
the tax cap calculation the same way. Cora can probably speak to it more eloquently than I can, but essentially, whatever pilot payment it goes on in that tax cap, and it's taken right off the top,
That's
and
right,
what we
it's
can
not
raise
quite-
the tax.
and it's only well, you lose two things. You lose your community growth factor because when it goes in the roll section, you don't get that. Okay, and this is a huge project. You probably see that where you won't see it now. And that allows them to increase, basically what that does, it allows them to increase their levy by what your project would have paid in full tax.
Yeah, they're raising the cap.
So, but at the end of the pilot, you know, at the beginning of the tax cap calculation, you add in the pilots you received the last year, then you remove the pilots at the end of it. And so if you're at $1 million levy here and all of a sudden you've taken out $750,000, you're over the 2% tax cap. And the year it leaves the pilot.
Yeah, when we get actual figures, we actually have a program that we can long-term plan tax cap implications over time. My question is what is the life of this, the useful life of this particular project? I mean, you're forecasting out to 2000 and.
25 years is what they decided to do their discounted cash flow calculations. 40 years is the estimated life of the project. We probably are not going to be able to negotiate a pilot with all the taxing jurisdictions that exceeds 15 years. Okay.
So, you know, that's 15 years of people. That's what
The companies would love a 20 or a 30-year pilot. Some municipalities have done 30-year pilots. I think that's a deal breaker right out of the gate, more than 15 years. And I think it's important to point out the IDA has uniform tax exempt policy. This would follow what's called a deviation, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Wade. And for us to issue a pilot that's a deviation, everyone's going to have to agree to the terms.
Okay, one of my questions.
All the time.
Amount and all that. So it's all or nothing. And we've seen some issues. There's a project in Adams where the town and the county missed that 60-day notice. And they negotiated a pilot solely with the village.
Yeah, and I think they've corrected something since, because the school district, South Jeff got left out of that because of a mistake on the state website.
Yeah,
They showed them being opted out and they weren't.
no, it shows them granting it when they didn't. Now they had opted out. Well, correct me if I'm
Oh,
wrong.
yeah, you're right. No, it showed them being in when they had opted out. Yeah.
So they now
Yeah.
would have to either go through us or South Jeff would have to change their position on Field Property 487 and negotiate a pilot. I guess our goal would be, in a perfect world, if we were negotiating, we'd never do a pilot that left the county and the town out of the negotiations. Okay, we should all have, I guess let's all hang together on this and we can get through it. So I think the tax cap implications for South Jeff, I don't think a whole lot of generation is in South Jeff Central. The majority, I would say at least 80% is in Hounsfield. it's, until we see more from the developer, it's gonna be hard to determine. I think Sackets would have the most,
And they'll break that up by megawatt produced within that particular taxing jurisdiction, is that how I understand it?
it's,
Pretty much. Yeah.
it's tough, because the land, they may have to lease more acres per megawatt in South Jeff or Watertown than they do in Hounsfield, who knows? So that's gonna be the unknown, is what are the lease payments in Hounsfield versus the lease payments in Watertown and lease payments. It's gonna be a moving target for a while, I'm not gonna lie to you.
Number two wind in Harrisburg and Palaugo had a different wattage, megawatt unit on
It's probably not.
site. In other words, some of them were 2.3s, some of them were 4s. So the only way I could value it is take by the megawatt. So, and apply that to the parcel, there's a whole bunch of parcels all over the place, so it's a challenge there. You know, you don't have that problem with solar, but we may get some wind over here, who knows?
Excuse me,
This formula too, it affects, I mean, it's basically affects the value of the project, but the land underneath is still the full value taxation.
It's gonna be good. The state says use normal appraisal methodologies to value.
There we go, okay, yep. And it should
They're
go up.
just, they're just dumping it on
Yeah.
the Rogers of the world
Right.
to come up with a reasonable value for the land. when
But
it's
that's
out.
what they're doing now, basically, we have a value of land underneath, and they pull.
So there's still,
How do we
the full
establish-
tax, still, there's still, that's still taxable value for this, for the.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the project thing,
Okay,
the
we
piece of
don't-
land, right, the project brings value, pilot is only on the project, it's built on.
Okay.
The land underneath is being leased. Now, it may have been vacant farmland paying just one value, but now that it's getting lease payments, this becomes a higher rate. So now you're getting more taxes on this, because this part is not getting up a pilot. The pilot is only getting the value that's added in the solar project, but the land itself goes up in value, therefore goes up in
That's
taxation.
one of the complaints I've had, they didn't give us any instructions, except value the land as you normally do, well, you use the market. There are no sales for leased land under, you know, turbines or solar panels, we don't have those sales, so how do you do that? That's why I came up with a primary site value, and it worked. But so far.
Christina, were you gonna ask a question?
Yeah, do we have an address for this location? Because you said it's about 80% in Hounsfield, and we do have property in Hounsfield, so maybe it's on those documents you shared with us and we just haven't seen it yet, but is there an address?
The next rainy day, I'll go through their site plans and see if they have any lists or have listed or shown the school district boundaries on their array locations, okay? I can't answer that right now.
Yeah, I've got a map I can see right now. I'm not sure about the town houses, but I did have school district maps. I was looking, I had the map of the district, I mean, of the project. And I was kind of looking at both school district maps and kind of, okay, well, it does come to South Jeff here and it goes to the Saggins Harbor there.
On the state site, everybody submits things a little differently. The project I looked at showed parcel and the megawatt installations on it. I haven't seen that on Boralex. So it's kind of hard to pull it back in to say how much is there. But the minute they say we want to have a discussion, that's the first question. If they call the school district before we meet as a group again, ask the question. I need to know the megawatts in my school district. I need to know the megawatts in each town. If they don't give it to you, you don't meet with them. Ask them what the lease prices are. I mean, I got a whole list of things we're gonna ask the very first meeting, and if they don't give it to you, why would you even talk to them? And honestly, Boralex has been forthcoming with most of their information they've given, and they're gonna have to give it to us at some point in time.
Are we to assume that the leased land final model is the way that it's going to proceed and that
Yes,
so that this final project owns land is not the reality, right?
I just wanted to show you that it's showing that land has a significant
Okay.
value increase from what we're used to seeing. It's important to point out that schools, things like library taxes, they pay on the full assessment. There's no abatement of library taxes. fire district taxes, health district taxes. They don't have to pay water or sewer taxes, but if they were to put in an office. So that should be it. You have a pretty three something fire tax in zone one, right?
Yeah.
So how this affects them, I don't know. The towns do have the authority, more so under the ORES, the Office of Renewable Energy Siting. They're required to negotiate private or or a host community benefit. You may want to talk something about that, but most of the time they want that coming off the top of taxation, which then could affect how everyone looks at the overall pilot.
At least at this point, the county is willing to let us create suffix parcels for these projects. And then they would be, the land would be included with the value of the panels or whatever. And then the bill would be sent to JCID, the under IDA. But at least the homeowner, the property owner wouldn't be liable for any taxation.
Isn't what they're doing right
I have a fundamental problem with
I
that
know you
because they're making, if I'm leasing them 100 acres and it's $1,000 an acre, I'm getting $100,000 a year. I could sell that lease, that value, you have layers of ownership. The only thing they're leasing is a leasehold right. There's the fee ownership right underneath that.
Well, it's up to the landowner.
Yeah.
If they don't want it, if they don't want a suffix, they want to collect the taxes from the project owner, fine.
They're gonna want.
I hear your philosophy, but at the same point, I mean, if it's valued X amount of dollars, I don't care if it's coming from the developer or landlord. As long as the jurisdiction.
Well, the only problem is if there's a default,
Well, if the IDA does this and if anyone chooses 487, by the way, if one taxing entity chooses to use section 487, we're out of it. Okay? Because you can't have you couldn't have a 487 exemption and us create an IDA exemption. Because we exempt everything and then we collect it through the pilots. You can't have one choose 487 and the other taxing jurisdictions go IDA pilot is what our council has told us. Okay.
Here's a question, Paul, might sound stupid. Community host benefits. If the company was supposed to provide municipalities for any cost to hire any expertise, they might have to hire lawyers, experts in the field, and all that stuff. We had to put in an application that I put in like $35,000 or $38,000. It was rejected. We got the letter back from.
You're putting for an intervener fund.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
And you didn't get a penny from them?
got nothing.
I
I haven't seen them in 6-7 months now. Usually I have to have, you call meetings once a week, but
Yeah, we haven't heard from them in a while either.
we got nothing out of that.
But who rejected the intervener?
Some judge.
Right.
Is the, I don't know,
Yeah,
administrative law.
yeah, they make the determination.
I think you can appeal that.
Because Ralph.
cost me that much to appeal it.
Well, find out what you spent and then make the demand in the host community benefit package to be reimbursed for all your legal fees. I'd hate to tell you how much did in Galoo Island 1, we were out a boxcar of money because it dropped it at the end and there were still some outstanding expenses. They get paid, the town lost money. So.
And even our district in Galoo 1 and Galoo 2, we spent all of the money just with consultation with our attorney, and that's money that came right out of taxpayers' pocket.
Question for school superintendents. Have you had any discussions among your association to try to leverage the state to do amendments to the tax?
Huge. Every time we meet with our assemblymen, our senators, anytime we get an opportunity to lobby for a revision in the tax calculations, we're pushing hard. Because that's our concern. We want to support development, of course, but we can't do it at the to the detriment of our district. So it, you know, I want to see these things happen in the county and in the district. I think it's good for the economy, but, the sad reality is it could be relatively harmful. And we've got to find ways to mitigate that. And the only way that I have discovered we can mitigate that is through legislation, which is,
Well, I just wondered if all the school districts started saying, we're not giving, we want full taxation, so we don't have the problem, unless you change the tax cap, would that get their attention? Think of what's the chip factory in Syracuse? That's gonna come.
yeah.
Think what that's gonna do to school districts if they don't change the tax cap legislation. You know, there's only two ways, get legislation or hope you have the support of the
I have
community.
heard that this governor is more amenable to considering it. Cuomo was absolutely not touching it. I'm not touching it because if he opened it up, he thought that the crack would become bigger and he would lose his ground. But this governor seems to be a bit more reasonable in looking at that. But I have not heard if there's been any more momentum on that. But I just know that it has been brought to our local legislators. I hope the JCIA has also brought it.
The state economic corporation, which, and I know the schools are.
It's a simple, yeah.
It is. But Jen's right, I mean, our understanding from the government, they're like, the previous government, was like to even open it up because there were other issues that were legislative for the legislators.
What is the pilot, what is the like projected or desired pilot timeline that Orlex is communicated to people about?
We haven't talked about them in a long
I
time.
we haven't talked about, they may have said 20 years earlier. But we
No. I mean, when do they hope, when do they submitted all of their required paperwork and gone through the necessary submissions, now what? Like, when are they looking for the project to
I
come
know there's
online?
emails.
Oh, I saw something on when I was looking for whether, I think they're looking third or fourth quarter of 2024 to energize.
When you say energize,
That
talk to a
means-
layperson.
Turn the switch on.
Turn
your
the switch on,
generator.
okay,
that
that's
started-
35%, all right.
Okay, but that was filed in a while ago.
They're already behind schedule then.
And I think they're all struggling with acquiring all the stuff to build them. I don't think there's any that of these large scale that are under construction in the state yet. A lot of them have permits, but I was told that once they were given the permit, the approval they had, then you gotta create, John, and help me out, construction documents, how they're gonna operate, how they're gonna protect the roads. Another year of submissions before you get the approval to build. You've got the permit that, okay, you meet the permits, now you got, I think they gotta supply.
So based on that and the recent approval, we look at 25.
So it's out there a ways, but they aren't gonna, construction is deemed by. Sorry.
Wonder who's phone that.
Well, I got in trouble with the poultry people yesterday.
Yeah.
They were asking why it wasn't a rooster.
Get an almond tree doing that.
They're funny.
Almond milk.
It's
It's lecture, what's an almond milk? The real property tax law identifies the date that they execute their interconnection agreement as the date that technically construction started. So I doubt they've done that yet because they have to send all the taxing jurisdictions notice of when it's been executed. So that's when you know they're moving forward, and I doubt they'll sign that until they have their tax issues settled. And John has worked, represented another county, and you can't tell us that's fine. Have you heard numbers on what they're looking for?
Not really at this point.
We've heard numbers early on at 3,000 a megawatt, and I think that's a deal breaker for.
Yeah, and that's about the range, 3,500.
One concern we had when we created the declining schedule for payments is now with this model that I would imagine next year, I think they just rushed it and used the same discount rate as last year. The cost of money's gone up. who knows what's happening with tax rates next year? And there's gonna be depreciation factors, and at some point, what we're collecting per megawatt may be more than what taxation would generate in megawatt, because we under 487 and the IDA pilots, you can make them enter into a pilot, but it can't be more than normal taxation.
Then the question arises, does that go on a year by year basis, or can you take total not much in the pilot versus total output back over the period of the pilot? In which case it's still redundant.
Roger, get that answer from Jeff for us.
Know what I'm saying? So at some point in time, our pilot may expect a value, which we're not supposed to do. But if you look at it over the period of the pilot, we'd be under the full tax. So,
Because it's inverted.
well, they're inverted, well, because it's inverted, yes, that's why we at some point, the.
I think early on in your window,
The taxation the pilot value may exceed the tax value.
most of the pilots I've seen, Chris, they start at the same $5,500, but they go up every year. If you have an assessment that's going down every year, and you have an inflation factor built into your calculation, that crossing of those two lines could come sooner.
I found it interesting in the spreadsheet that we're the only ones with the end.
That's,
Well, that's state here.
geez, I talked to someone who told me they had an inverted, maybe.
Oh, we didn't give that sort of, yeah, would have been,
Oh, yeah, there's another one.
Oh, okay.
Maybe.
Oh, I see.
yeah, I tell people that they all kind of, I've met that, so I'm not worried about the county doing that, but. That's what. But I explain that's basically the county school district concerned at the end of the pilot.
I guess the final thing I'll say is we're here to help however you go, get to something we can all live with, okay? Like I said, if one taxing jurisdictions decides to use 487, I think we still provide technical assistance, but we can't write a pilot. You're gonna be on your own for selection and enforcement and dealing with it at that point. Where right now, if it is a pilot through the IDA, we collect and distribute the money. One other thing, if you go 487, talk to your council about pilot mortgages. We require pilot mortgage, which would, if a pilot goes to default without a pilot mortgage, a pilot is not a tax, and at that point, the county is not required to make you whole for any unpaid pilots. Where a pilot mortgage may secure secure the payments for you if a pilot was to go to belly up, excuse me. So
Paul, I reached out to Ron Robbins, and he said he heard from Boilex about 6 weeks ago. And they mentioned to him that they might try to do the project in phases for the Greens Corners project. So, but that's all he knows. And I don't know what difference.
I imagine that means redoing their whole application or submitting phase applications. I mean, they're gonna have to build their interconnection substation to handle all of it at once, and that's going to be big nuts to crack.
Yes.
That's 15-20 million bucks we've been told. Yeah. And these numbers here include all the attributes of the project, including everything, but if they put storage in. This does not deal with storage. In storage, you're at your free will to put a value on storage. So.
I have. Without any guidance, basically.
Would that be done? Have you?
500,000.
Well, let's talk about the Jefferson County pilot. Is it, on 4 drive, have you done that yet?
Yeah.
Did you do storage?
500,000.
Okay.
We did the pilot on that one. That's one we've done that had battery storage. We just basically charge the same 5,500 per megawatt on battery storage that we do on the projects. Okay.
There's no guidance on it at all.
That's why.
Well, that's all the talking I have planned. It's too much, really. Is there any question?
No, we're not using that number, but what is the total cost to build this project? Do we know?
Well, Scott, this project, because of its size, when we receive state money, is prevailing wage rate, so that's inflated it dramatically. So I'm guessing, let me put it this way, the project, a 5 megawatt project in Shimon, I saw the application, was 11 million bucks. Okay, and I think that included storage in Shimon, didn't it? I don't know, there's storage, and that was for fixed arrays. That's what the developer claimed the cost. So.
And a lot of those 5 megawatt projects are running in that range and.
I don't think it's too,
Yeah, so-
I think there's, economies of scale. We were told it'd be 110 to 120 million dollars early on. The projections, but I gotta believe that's gone up because that was back in 2019 before inflation and wage raises, and cost of goods. I bet you're looking at 130 to 140 million bucks though. But that's on the list of questions to ask.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
the
120 megawatts, 120,000.
120 megawatts is 120,000 kilowatt hours, if that's your question.
Okay, well, no, total megawatts for this project,
It's under
120.
120, okay.
If you're really bored and have nothing to do, like.
No, that would be nothing. Right.
There's a site, if you go on and you type NYSORES,
Uh-huh.
it takes you then to the siting board site, and then you can check the created projects and go down there and you can see every document, every comment that's been filed on this project.
Okay.
So you can look at the site plans,
Yes, under the.
you can look at the comments. And anything you want to read about the project, if they get a letter from you, it goes into a file, so.
So is GCIA the cost benefit of this particular project, and are you, what value is it bringing to our community?
We can't do it yet.
Until we get an application.
So if you figure full taxation, I think we're out of, you're looking at almost $1 million a year between the taxing jurisdictions.
Jobs?
Post-construction, you don't want to know, it's probably.
Minimal.
Maybe.
Very minimal.
They're
There
gonna
was a lot of people that are servicing around us. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
And cheap.
cheap in them, they stay.
Yeah, large construction jobs, otherwise, we only take a couple of people to service them. You
Yeah,
know,
they run these,
but they won't be serving projects all the time, they'll be servicing various projects.
And then they might contract with somebody to do mowing periodically if the farm doesn't do it.
So
Well-
Jen, we echoed those same questions. What is the value that comes from this by offering a pilot? And I hear what you're saying. It's very minimal. So we need more information.
I see the only real benefit is the check you get once a year from them. There's no guarantee, well, you all saw that tragic accident, the construction workers were that were working in St. Lawrence County, that's from.
Sarah Assemblyman called. That's good.
Yeah, but they were working out of.
Yes, sir.
Cayuga County,
St. Lawrence.
so we need some, I don't think the IBEW has enough people to build them. So, can I ask, Ms. Chamberlain a question? Have you had discussions on, Field of Dreams?
Yeah, so we just, I don't know if we call it, we finished the pilot.
Yeah.
Is that what we did just a
We
couple
came
of
to
months
an
ago?
agreement.
Came to an agreement. We didn't get invited to the table until really the 11th hour. So, that was, I guess from our perspective, a little frustrating because it seemed like all the decisions had been made and they really just wanted our blessing at the end.
Are they paying you money?
It's very small.
Yeah,
They're giving
very
us
little.
a community host check, and then the pilot is, I can't remember, it's either 500 a year, maybe?
Yeah,
It's
something
very
like that.
nominal.
What happened there is they went and cut the deal with the village.
Yeah.
Almost exactly what we would have done a deal here for and distribute the money equitably between the parties using a rateable distribution.
Yeah, and that didn't happen.
Yeah, and actually what happened at that time, Paul actually caught it on the website that South Jeff was incorrectly listed on the state website as being in 487 when they had back opted out. So I called your predecessor and that's when he talked to the council and he wasn't aware of that and they've gotten left out that way. So.
Yeah, and we opted out again. And I think you had mentioned that it was hard to hear at some points of the discussion, but we opted out again for the future.
You know, you can opt back in and there's a section of the real property tax law where you opt in to grant the exemption. Your big fear is missing the 60-day notice where they become exempt. You can opt in and there's a resolution you can adopt that wipes that 60-day notice off the table. You're basically saying, if you build a solar facility, we want a pilot. And then you never have to worry about missing the 60-day notice, and you don't have to try this, opting back in, granting a pilot, opting out in the same meeting, which I have a real problem with, you know, it just seems too funky for me that you could do that. They haven't started construction there yet, have they?
I honestly haven't driven by. I don't know.
So you may want to talk to your attorney if you ever deal with this again about opting back in and then adopting the new section of the real property tax law that removes that 60-day notice concern.
Okay.
So
Thank
you
you.
can once you do that, you can demand a pilot and you can demand a pilot up to full taxation.
And
So
the other thing they mentioned was the host community agreement, and that can make it more enticing for school districts because that is outside of the tax cap realm. For now, yes. But there is like some very gray area legally. So school districts need to proceed with caution when we accept any of those host community agreements or those perks. But I am so far my colleagues who have moved forward and entered into those type of agreements have realized some great benefits, and there has not been backlash yet. So it could make it more enticing to districts if the developer could think up front what might be something.
How long does that run for?
Say again?
How long does the host community agreement run for?
I honestly don't know. I just know that the ones that I'm aware of are short term. They're short term. It might be a little large upfront is helping to fund something. I mean, it's not.
It got a little
It's just
sketchy in line with what they did, because they diverted tax money to things that I think you can't use tax dollars to do scholarships, can you?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
They diverted tax money to the Northern New York Community Foundation, and they're going to give scholarships with money that I think should be used to fund what school districts are authorized to do.
When you say they, who are you referring to?
Line Central.
Oh, okay.
They did really weird. I don't think they're even entitled to an exemption because
They opted in and opted out after construction already began.
yeah.
So
Well, the project was built and energized, and they paid full taxes last year for school for life. So now they're going to get $2,000 for something for the pilot payment.
I think it's probably only a matter of time before the state catches up with those host community. I think we just might.
These are conversations we've had for like 5 years.
Yeah.
Haven't caught up to us yet, so.
Yeah. We'll just
You
ride
gotta
the
get a
wave.
class afterwards.
Our
what I say.
council, I tried to talk about converting everything to community agreements. And our council said, you really can't claim that even the county is a host community. As first off, you can't find a definition of host community.
Exactly. So
The
right.
town clearly is because it's written into ORES regulations,
Mhm.
but the school, the county are the quote host. I thought that'd be a great way, and I think we have to have this discussion again with the NIPA issue. Yeah, then maybe we get away from a pilot and do everything as annual host community payments. So that if NIPA takes over a project, that's not a tax, it's a contractual payment they have to continue to make. I don't like these projects, I assume we get them for every, weekend.
Well, we don't need to do a pilot.
Well, you know what I'm saying. These things are gonna be more than 50% subsidized by government. And if we give a huge pilot, it's gonna be worse, they're gonna be, local people subsidizing them. Makes no sense.
I'm surprised they haven't been more aggressive. I was at the town of Huntsville for their open house and they had last one in the fall at the town barn.
Yeah, I think.
They had a public.
The public
they had
hearing, yes,
the
public hearing.
public
Yeah,
hearing.
I went to public hearing and who's the point person, the gentleman?
Andrew Buckley.
Andrew Buckley's, and I talked to Andrew, I said, hey, listen, I want a heads up if you are interested in approaching our board about a pilot agreement. And, yeah, I'll give you plenty of notice, and he has, that's the last time I've seen him.
Well, I think we heard, they're probably reanalyzing the whole project from what Jay just told
Yeah.
us. So. For any ones that are guests today here at the IDA, we're here to help any way we can. Facilitate this, like I said, I'd like us to all hang together so that nothing falls through the crack. Unless Dave is, our vendor says differently. I think there's more power to us with these developers as a group. And I think they will get more aggressive with the recent legislation that's been passed. Any questions?
Thanks. I'll send out, right after Paul, you're gonna look for a map, but I'll send you out a map that I have. It's not great, but you can zoom in on it and you can see what roads are surrounding the various parts.
That'd be great. Thank you. And thanks for inviting us.
Have a great day.
You too.